Thanks. Yeah, so this year I self-published the book, and I kind of wanted to talk about why, sort of how I got there, and just some stuff about it. So, quick about me. Sorry, I actually talk really loud, so I probably don't need this mic that much, but I'm the head instructor and development lead at HackerU, Real HackerU contingent here today as well. Thank you. Christiani on Twitter if you want to get in touch with me, RyanChristiani.com. And I also help organize Node School Toronto. If you've ever been wanting to learn some Node, great kind of monthly meetup group. We do it every third Saturday, or try to do it every third Saturday of the month. Really open, just come. We usually do it at Shopify, so their offices are really nice. And yeah. So, I'm here to talk to you about this thing, Let's Learn ES6. And this is the book that I published this year. And let's talk about how did it start. So at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, I decided I wanted to kind of get into some more passive income streams, just to kind of like supplement all income. And I really wanted to get into doing some video stuff. Being a teacher, there's lots of things that you learn really well in depth, and there's lots of content out there for people, but sometimes you want to kind of also add to that same conversation. So I was really getting into ES6, and I really wanted to do that. So I'm a self-taught developer. I went to Sheridan for illustration, and then I taught myself how to become an developer, not an illustrator. And I actually really respect and am grateful for the kind of work that people put out on the web, be it videos, blog posts, stuff like that. So I also wanted to contribute back to that. So I wanted to do these videos to kind of help people learn. So I picked ES6. ES6 was sort of the thing that I was really into at the time. And there was not a lot of content out there that I thought was super accessible. There's lots of like foobar, Baz examples of things, and you're like, okay, cool. If you get JavaScript or you kind of get programming things, you can kind of like reason about that stuff. But if you don't, it's kind of like, what is the point? When I was learning to program myself, I was like, foo, is that a thing that's in every language? Like, why is everything called that? You have no idea why, right? And this is something we see a lot at HackerU when we're teaching people stuff. You just see sort of these conventions that are taken advantage or taken for granted when you're reading a blog post. You might be like, oh yeah, of course it's not going to be called foo. Why would it be called that? But it's just an example. So I wanted to do these videos. So literally January 1st of this year, I released my first video. It was going to be, it was actually pretty quick. Like I didn't know what I was going to do just yet. It was like literally New Year's Day, I think, and I was like, well, maybe I should just do videos on this. And I had my partner come up, Erin, come up with this little graphic for me, and she did some animations, which were great. So I just kind of released the video. And it just kind of was really basic stuff at first. So it's just like, here's some stuff that I think are really good. So like let, const, and like template literals. And then I started thinking about it, and I started to kind of like roadmap, because I enjoyed making the video. It's fun to kind of sit, think, and like break down the problem or the topic that you're trying to teach. So I kind of kept going from there. So I set up a roadmap. I tried to do them weekly. I tried to release them weekly. Little topics, like one topic at a time, about 15, 17 minutes tops per one. And it didn't actually take long until I got an email. And the email, so the publisher that contacted me was Manning. How many people have heard of Manning Publishing? Yeah, they do like, probably their most popular one. Secret of the JavaScript Ninja was written by like John Resnick and Bear, I forget his last name. But like really, really good books. So it wasn't like an O'Reilly. Wow, you're welcome, right? So I got this email, and really interestingly, in the email, they didn't say, hey, we want you to write this book. They're like, hey, it was like from a editor assistant, I forget their name, but they contacted me like, hey, my editor is looking to write this book, wondering if you had any thoughts on it and knew people who might want to write it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll email back forward because I could think of maybe some people, like just like big names. Like if you're on Twitter and you're like, you know, searching the hashtag ES6 or ES2015 or whatever, you're gonna see some big names. I was like, I don't know, have you thought of these people? But then you get on the phone call. So I got on the phone call with this guy, Brian, who was the editor, and very quickly it became sort of apparent that maybe he actually wanted me to write the book. And all of this started simply just by putting some content out there. So I think one key takeaway here is put some stuff out there. If you think you have some knowledge on a topic, I think the thing that a lot of people do is like, it's too basic, or like it's already been done. There's always a better way to explain something, or a different way to explain something. So put some content out there. So these people saw my videos. I don't actually know if they watched all of them, or they just like saw it and were like, well, let's talk to this person. But that's how that kind of gets started. So I get the phone, or I don't get the phone call. I call him on Skype, and we start talking back and forward. And by the end of the first phone call, it was like, well, would you be interested in writing the book? And again, I have a bachelor's in illustration. In high school, I was never like, I never felt like I was a great student. I wasn't a good student. If you ever see my tweets or my blog posts, like I typo like crazy. I can't spell sometimes, and they're like, would I want to write the book? It was actually a very exciting idea. So I didn't say yes right away. I actually kind of like took a second. I was like, oh, let me think about that. Let me like look it over and kind of think about that. So after that, what happened is I kind of, again, thought about it. And what I started to do is I started to kind of use the content that I was doing for my videos to kind of as a baseline for what the book would be. So I started kind of laying out all of the future videos I wanted to do, all the current stuff I had, stuff maybe I hadn't really considered, and I kind of came up with sort of a draft of what I would want the book to be. So then after that, I started talking to Brian a bit more. We had a couple more calls, and I was giving him kind of the stuff, and we went back and forward on the content, what it would be, and then he ended up offering me a contract. And at this point, I was like, there's no way it's going to get this far, and it did. Really, self-doubting myself at this point. But it got that far, and at that point, I had to really think, did I actually want to do that? Because at that point, you sign on to this thing, they're going to give you an advance and all that stuff, and you really have to go ahead and write the damn thing. And I turned it down. And there's a couple reasons I turned it down. So the number one reason I turned it down is that for me, time was a bit of an issue. Like I work full time, 10 to 6, 4 times a year at HackerU. Like that's full time. And then during the other time, it's a little bit more open for me. But it's going to be really hard. And you never like get in, or what is it? People always say like you don't write a book for the money. And I didn't want to write the book for the money. They offer you in advance. It's $5,000 if you're interested, US. But I actually did the math on that, and by the time the book comes out, that's like less than $1 an hour that you're putting into the book. And I actually talked to a couple of people who wrote books, formatting, like fairly popular ones I thought. And by the end of the whole thing, after like a year and a half of actually doing the book, like you actually don't get that much money in the end. So I was like, I'm not obviously in it for the money either. So I decided, hey, I'm already doing these videos. I already have all of this content. Why don't I just go ahead and self-publish it myself? They found me through my videos, through my content that I created. One thing in the contract is they actually wanted to do videos of their own. And I was like, well, but I already have videos. Like, I already have that content. So it got to the point where I was kind of feeling like, well, I've already done all this legwork to create a book, or not to create a book. I didn't even myself consider self-publishing at the moment, but kind of done all this legwork to create the content, to create this thing that I wanted to help people learn a bit more. So I decided that I was going to do this, and it was a bit of a scary thing. So like, it's not like easy to just be like, no, I won't take the contract, because you're constantly regretting, self-doubting, and constantly reconsidering. Even to this day, I have released it, and I'll talk about that, but you're always like, what if I just done that? Like, it probably would have been better if I just done that. But I decided to do this, and it kind of set me up until, I think it was about a month ago that I released like the early access version, but basically from like February until now, a lot of my free time was simply just working on this book. One thing that you don't really think about, or maybe you think about this, I don't know. How many people have thought about writing a book before? A lot of work you probably think is going to go into it, right? A lot of work has to go into it. You have to do a lot of writing, and also in this case for the ES6, you have to do a lot of research. You want to make sure that you are actually giving people the proper facts, right? You're not just like, oh yeah, well I think it works like this. You have to try the things, read the things. Read actually other books. There's actually 2 other great ebooks on ES6. Exploring Java or ES6 with Axel Roschmeyer and Understanding ECMAScript 6 from Nicholas Zakis are really great ebooks that you can buy on LeanPub to do this. And that also brought up a point to me, is like, well, there's already 2 books out there, why would I write a book? What's the importance of my content? And those 2 books are actually really great. For me, a more experienced developer, you can read it, you can understand, you can kind of understand what they're talking about when it's a little bit more abstract. But it is a little bit more abstract. I think Axel Roschmeyer is like a PhD, like he's a doctor in computer science, I guess. But it's a very kind of like abstract, like high level stuff, and they don't really like explain things too much. So for me, I still wanted to do the book, even if I wasn't going to go through a publisher, because I felt that there was still more to say about the topic, or more content to sort of like go through at like an easier pace. So in my book, like I go over things that are complex topics, but we try to break it down to like the easiest, simplest solution. Sometimes that's it. We don't actually go into every detail of the thing, like all the nuances and stuff like that. But it's like, what would you need to know to get going now using that feature? Then when you get comfortable with it, maybe you'll pick up one of those other books and actually go further. So that's sort of the reason I decided to do that. And ultimately, some of the pitfalls for me were a couple things. So putting the time into it was really difficult. When I was teaching myself how to code, I was working full time. How many people have been to Groovy Shoes at Queen and John? Nobody? Okay, well, yeah, thank you. I worked there for about 2.5 years, 44 hours a week, and then I would go home at night and then teach myself how to code and then go back to work. I had a lot of free time then, because I just had a retail job. I had nothing else really going on. It was very easy. But when you are working full time and your job is a little bit more unset hours, a bit more loosey-goosey, it's very hard to find time to do this. And this is actually one of the reasons I turned down the contract, because when you're working with a publisher, you have some really hard, strict deadlines, right? And I felt that I wasn't going to be able to properly like hit all those deadlines. So I was like, oh, of course, I'll just do it myself and hit the deadlines just fine. Not quite. You have to be really, really kind of rigid with your schedule and like when you're going to work on things. Yeah, it is very, very tough. And actually, up until now, so by the time I released it, I was kind of like really pushing on it. And then I had a conference talk to do, so I kind of released it and then I just kind of like let it go, because I did full FITC the other week. So I had to like now focus on that content. And when I released the book, I did an early access, which is actually a really common thing with tech books now, especially like tech books where the technology they're talking about is probably already changed. Like I know somebody started working on like a React book, and it's like it's constantly changing. I'm like, why is that going to print right now? It's already changed the API kind of thing. But it's really common to release early access books. So I released 17 of the 22 chapters as a book. And I still need to finish the chapters, but now I've kind of like fallen off the bandwagon in terms of like the structured content. And honestly, after this talk, because this was the last thing I had kind of have to do this year, I'm just going to get right back into it. But in terms of pitfall, kind of carving out that time, very difficult. Another thing for me that was really, really hard and still is kind of difficult is marketing. I don't have a super huge online presence. And it's very hard to kind of like get the thing out in front of people. So every conference talk I've done this year, I've tried to get it out in front of people like that, but that is a very difficult thing to do. Again, working full time, you can't just be on Twitter like you're applying to things and like constantly doing this and that, and building up really robust Twitter campaigns. It's very difficult. So you see people like a Wes Boss, who like his whole job is that. He can easily get all that stuff, and like he's all over the place, but working full time, it's very hard to do that. And he released an ES6 thing this year. So like, for me that was like, ooh, there goes my content right there. So like stuff like that is really hard to kind of reason about. And that's, when he was doing that, he asked me, because he also teaches at HackView, he asked me like, would I be worried about that? Or would that be okay if you did that? And like, I can't say no. ES6, it's an open platform. I'm not like, no, you can't do that. But I knew instantly that that was going to be a really big thing for me, because that is going to be something that I can't really like market beyond, right? So that was hard for me. So the marketing portion, this is where I wished I had actually gone with the publisher. This was like my one slight regret. And I still got lots of time to market it. It's not done yet, so when it's done, like I'll put a lot of focus into it. But publishers have a lot of money behind that, right? If you think of O'Reilly, they get you going to conferences. Even Manning. So I talked to Ben Vinegar, who wrote third-party JavaScript for Manning in 2013. And actually in his Twitter profile, he says I was really big in 2013, literally because of that book, because they're just going to get you to go to conferences and speak about it. So that is your advertising right there, right? If you're self-publishing and you're not a super well-known name, very hard to kind of get that kind of stuff. So like in terms of sales and stuff like that, maybe you'd be interested in that. Very low sales, pretty low. I don't know if it's because it's early access. I have gotten a few emails where like, oh, I'm like really interested in buying it when it's done, like will it be covering X, Y, and Z? But I also know that it's just simply, I haven't had the same reach as maybe like a publisher or somebody with more time to actually put towards marketing.
How much is it?
It's $30. So that's I think a pretty fair price. That seems to be what kind of, actually if you go to like a Manning or a O'Reilly ebooks, they're like $45, $70, or about $47 kind of thing. Yeah, so lots of things to think about when it comes to that stuff. But ultimately, for me, it felt really, really good to put it out there. When people comment on the videos and they're like, this was a great video, it really helped me. I have like a promises video, and somebody's like, this was the clearest explanation of promises for me, and I was like, that feels great. So ultimately for me, you know, if 30 people, 100 people read the book and that was it, it would still be a success to me. You can still say that you've published a book, you've put in that time. You've taken the time to really get to know a topic. Like, you have to dig into the docs and reading the spec and stuff like that to really understand why things work, how they work, or what are the nuances that I maybe should be explaining to people. So ultimately, if you're thinking about, how many people are still thinking about writing a book? I say do it. Start with blog content, or just kind of like get into it. Like Yao was saying, put up a subscribe list, an email list. Because that's probably where I got most of my initial sales. When it was released, I put out an email and I got most of my initial sales through that. It was actually really good. So I highly suggest you still do that. Again, like I think a lot of us, you might have a topic that you want to talk about, you're like really passionate about, but you think, oh, yeah, but so-and-so did it already, or it's too basic. Coming from somebody who had to teach themselves, coming from somebody who actually teaches people, there's always a better way or a different way to explain something. And even if it's like a basic concept, it's going to be something that somebody will read and be like, yeah, that totally helped me. So I highly suggest you do that. That's all I really had to say today. Thanks.
Your videos to market yourself? Because it seems that you're doing pretty well with that.
With my what there?
Your videos.
Oh, I do market through the videos. Like every time I'm like, oh yeah, and here's the book. But yeah, I again, like I don't think maybe it's the early access thing, but I do use the videos to do that as well. Yeah, yeah.
Are you publishing your book in a platform like LinkUp, or are you doing it by yourself?
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good point. So I publish my book just on my website, and I use Shopify to distribute it. Shopify and Sendowl to do the digital, which is something I've seen quite a few people do. I was considering using LeanPub or something like that, but I kind of wanted to do the marketing site myself and like just have all that, so I went that route. But yeah, there's a person who keeps emailing me, and I just don't have the time, but they have like a book platform they're working on. They really want me to put the book on there. I just haven't had the time to like get to it. But yeah, I did want to kind of explore some potential other platforms for it as well. Yeah.
What about formats for the actual files?
Yeah, the formats come in PDF and EPUB. I just use what's it called, Pandoc on the command line to build them every time. And I write in Markdown, if anyone's interested. I just have a folder, a Markdown folder that I just like build it all up and then run it through a little script I wrote to do that. So yeah, it works pretty much everywhere. I'm thinking about doing like the Mobi format as well, but EPUB and PDF are good for now. So I'll hand over here, yeah.
Hey Ryan, my name is Ash Silva. I came especially for your presentation. I saw it on Meetup. I'm a book publisher that specializes in self-publishing, right? So I mean, I know the differences and the ratios and all that stuff. But I just want to offer to you and your group that we also see Yao's presentation. I think is so appropriate for where you lacked your marketing with what she can do with developing an email list and all that good stuff. And yeah, I think for you, a book to get out there to actually help your marketing, because your whole presentation could have been on a video, right? That would go on your website. So I just want to offer you that, without any obligation, we also print books at whatever stage of self-publishing you're at the best price in North America, copies. So it doesn't matter that you're not making money. You're writing a book to leave a legacy, to create more business, to get a better job. There's so many other reasons to write to self-publish that book that I'm willing to be a resource to anyone out here for free. Because we get people to Amazon. I've got a list of 20,000 people I can mail. I've got a community on Facebook and social media. They'll say, buy the ebook for 99 cents. And if you do it in a certain window, you get to be Amazon #1 bestseller. And there's ways to do it.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome.
So I offer myself too.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a great resource for anybody who wants to do that kind of thing, right? Yeah, awesome. Any other questions? Yeah?
What about going through educational books or something like that? Is there a way you can get colleges, universities, and colleges to pick up that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm sure like most publishers, there's a route for that. I didn't really think about that. I've taught at a Humber before, and yeah, I honestly feel like for that kind of stuff, especially for the web development industry, I don't know if that's what I'd want to do my book for, but yeah, there's totally a market for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I have not thought about actually doing that because it's not really a thing I was into. Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else? Yeah.
I was just going to ask if you would consider going to print. That was a very timely, appropriate comment, and if it was something that had you lean towards or against actual printing of a physical copy of the book.
I would love to do a print book at some point, but when I'm done the book, I would do that. Not at this state because there's still lots to do on it. But yeah, that is something I've considered because it would be really nice to have that physical printed copy. But I also think, especially because it's a book on the web, a e-format is pretty good as well. Somebody has anybody read the Smacks book by Jonathan Snook before? Scalable Modular CSS, one person in the back there. That book, he was working at Shopify at the time, and I think they really implemented that CSS methodology. But that book is a similar thing, very small book, no publisher, he printed it himself. And I was like, I could probably do that if I wanted, but nothing currently at the moment. I'm kind of enjoying just the EPUB format because it allows me to really kind of work on typos, edit, stuff like that. But yeah, maybe in the future. Yeah.
And so I just bought a book from Smashing Magazine. It was called Hard Boiled Web Design.
Yeah.
And I bought it primarily. It was discounted slightly, so it was $30 digital copy, but they sent you a printed copy of the trade paperback, and I went, that really appeals to me. I'm old school, but I like having.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It sits
Me
on
too.
the shelf. I don't care how old it is, but. I feel like those first editions where it's a short run, this is chapters 17, 22. Here they are. We do another full run. I think it feels like a collector's item and badge of honor.
Yeah. Yeah, I love print books. Even myself, when I read a novel, I'll read a print book as opposed to an ebook. And when I was learning, when Chapters was still at Richmond and John, I would go there on my lunch breaks and look at the books until I was able to buy one of them. So I love the printed book thing, but yeah, after kind of turning down the publisher, I just kind of went full into just the ebook for now, and then we'll see a little bit later in the future.
Hey Ryan, can I comment on that?
Sure.
Only from a marketing point of view, there's a place for both. So there's a place for ebooks, because you're right, this is about a developer's community, and the paper copy is really maybe not as important. But there is a manual factor where people want to, as you said, take a book and read it beside the fire.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They want the real book. And so you'll be costing yourself a lot of business if you don't do one or the other. Do the ebook, have a plan for that, but have your copies for those who want to buy a copy, even off your website. And there's ways of promoting it to get it out there.
Yeah.
For both of them.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's a thing that I think I'm going to look to probably when I'm done. So probably maybe mid next year when I'm really solid with the book as it is, and then kind of look into it then. But anything else? Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you so much.